All right, welcome in everyone, American and Leeds, and with me today is Adam Elliott from All Stats Aren't We. If you haven't followed All Stats Aren't We, I don't know, I feel bad for you. It's one of the best real uh, shows about Leeds United and the number. I call it the numbers behind the numbers. Kind of the underlying statistics of what happened in the match, and they're really smart tactically as well. I've been following them on Spotify for many years, but they've been a big podcast back when you guys had the Bielsa as your logo, and have since changed. But yeah, thanks so much, Adam.
Yeah, it's great to be here. And Bielsa, I guess, was the era of this football club where a lot of people did get on board, watching Leeds all around the world, just paying more attention to Leeds. And it's when we, as a podcast team, decided, there's a space for this in the Leeds market, I guess. And so it was John McKenzie at the time, who's now at
Yeah,
Tifo, the Athletic. He set it
right.
up. There were a few of them for a while, and then I joined about 2021, and now I'm the host. So some of you might know me. Hello. If you don't, you should go over and listen at some point. That'd be great.
Yeah,
Thanks for
yeah,
having me.
please do. And they've launched their YouTube side now as well, which I think
Mm.
is fantastic because I think there's just a ton of folks that just consume so much content on YouTube, but haven't necessarily dipped into the audio platforms as well. So, anyways, smash the like if you could. But let's just get stuck in. We're 4 games into the season. The narrative now that is very present is the fact that there's been no goals from open play. Each game should be taken kind of in its own, digestible way, and and nuance. They're all different sides. They have different tactics, different managers, different players with different attributes. But now that we have the sample size of 4 games, and maybe you could even think that the Arsenal game is the outlier, what's your take on the club and the makeup of the team and the system and Farka?
Um, well, I guess I'm as worried as everyone else is right now about chance
Yeah.
creation and open play. I think the end of the window was disappointing, and everyone knows that. I don't think that should take away from, in my opinion, what was quite a strong open to the window and from some good signings within the 10 that we did manage to get. I actually quite like most of them, to be fair. The problem is it's not just about the signings we have made, it's also about who we've not signed. So when I look at the team against any opposition, Arsenal, it could be Fulham, it could be anyone, I do think the same problem is there. If Leeds go behind in games this season, do they have the personnel to unlock that game, to get back into it? I'm not 100% sure that they do.
Sure.
Obviously, we've got the January window only in about 15 games time. So it's like if we can be in there until January, you kind of got the time to address it at that stage. But as it is now, the way I see it, and I think the way most Leeds fans see it, is that we are short in that area. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that we can keep games 0-0, which we almost did against Fulham. For our second 0-0 of the season, it would have been, and for a third clean sheet, that would have been great. And if we can make games tight and low margin like that, then I do think, yeah, Leeds can get some points this season. Probably not just against some of the kind of weaker teams as well. You'd be looking at some of the bigger teams, and you'd be hoping maybe we can frustrate them in the way that Burnley nearly did with Liverpool over the weekend, for example. So I think long term, as in looking past January and beyond, I'm still feeling like Leeds have a chance this season to survive. But I am thinking that the second half of the season might have to be a bit stronger than the first, personally, just with the way the team looks right now. You then got the question of, and I'll put this to you as well,
Mm-hmm.
and to fans listening, but is Daniel Farke the right manager, A, to coach a team to set up the way that we
Mm-hmm.
have? And so far, I think he's done quite well in that regard. But B, is he then adaptable enough to find ways to create goals in a repeatable way? And so that's what we've been talking about over at All Stats is I'm not sure what the repeatable patterns of play are right now. So it's like, oh, maybe a
Mm-hmm.
set piece, maybe a goal on the counter attack in transition. I'm not sure about anything else at the moment. I'm hoping that maybe the team gels a bit more in attack and some of the attacking pieces, they find ways to build those connections on and off the pitch, and that might help and bear fruit in time. But right now, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not I'm not wholly convinced.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, chance creation, and since I've been a fan for about 10 years. So Gary Monk was my first year that I really
Wow,
fell in
yeah.
love with this club. And since I've been a fan, it's been really, we have to create a lot of chances to put away a lot of to put away chances. Bielsa was like that. I mean, chances,
Yes.
chance after chance after chance, and you'd be like, where are we going to bury one? Farker's kind of been similar to that, even in the championship. And yeah, to me, if he can find patterns of play, because I don't know, the creativity at the top of the pitch is so lacking, unfortunately. If he can find a pattern of play or systems of play to hit people on the counter and build up that front three. And I also think, the partnerships on the wings are important. So Bogle and Goodmanson developing partnerships with their wingers, I think is pretty important now too, because I think a lot of, I don't know, expression, to use a Bielsa term, will happen on those wings, because the center forward is so necessary for hold up play. But yeah, so I mean, of course, this is going to be the kind of the way it goes. I still don't understand, if we are down a goal, as you just mentioned, like if we do go down a goal. I mean, if you take again Arsenal out of the equation, because that was just an outlier, and I don't think the team was really mentally prepared for that game, if that makes any sense. But it's been basically 1-0, 0-0, and then a 0-0-1. I don't know what Farka will do if we do go down a goal, let's say before halftime. What's he going to do to unlock? Is he going to put Perot in a 10, which I don't think is the best idea? Is he going to, is he eventually going to switch back to a 4-2-3-1 if he's desperate for something? I almost think against Wolves, he might consider switching to a 4-2-3-1, but I doubt he will. He's so conservative. And I was talking to another person about that. It's not like he's setting up a block. We do have possession. We are drawing kind of a team out, but when we do go forward, when I rewatched that Fulham game, feels like there's no real intent. They almost value possession more than creating a chance, which is bizarre. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how Daniel Farke evolves. What you just finished up the Fulham review? What were your kind of the things that you mentioned on your show that were revelatory in terms of the numbers and what you guys saw over there on the Fulham side?
The standout number was the 0.48 open play expected goals figure, which is remarkably low. And like, obviously, you're away to any Premier League team. It's not easy, but you'd have to say that Fulham is a team that you'd expect Leeds to be at least a bit more competitive in an attacking sense in that game than they were. I know they had a couple of flash moments with the Longstaff shot on the edge of the box, the Calvert-Lewin header in the first half. That there were a couple of moments like that, but they're really half chances. So I was looking for anything that was repeatable, and I couldn't see it. Like you say, maybe there's some connections that get built in the wing back and full back area to generate more chances in that way. And the right centre and left centre mid, I think Tanaka and Stark are two of our better kind of more technical midfielders. So if we can play them a little bit more, maybe that'll give us something as well. But yeah, it's concerning. And like Fulham, for example, in the preview of that game, we were discussing the fact that last season they really, really struggled against teams in the kind of bottom half at home. They were really not able to find the answers in that game. And we saw them doing that for about 65, 70 minutes. That's what they were struggling with. So, in a defensive sense, we were sound, but that's kind of to be expected against Fulham. But in an attacking sense, you can't be putting up, I think it was about 0.7 XG in total in the game. You can't do that against Fulham and expect to win unless you're really conceding 0 at the other end. So, yeah, the numbers are a bit worrying.
Right. Yeah,
we've had. Sorry, just one more thing. Actually, we've had the fewest shots on target of any team in the Premier League so far, and I know that includes Arsenal and Newcastle, who are in the Champions League this season. But that's still 2 shots on target per game is really, really poor. Wolves aren't too much better for this weekend too, and I'm sure we'll talk about them. So maybe this game's going to be really, really drab at the weekend. We'll see.
Yeah, you can't draw your way to safety. I just don't believe, or 0-0 your way to safety. I don't believe that will be successful. You do have to score goals because things happen. We saw that happen, in the first two campaigns under Bielsa and Marsh, and just like penalties, handballs, red cards, things like this happen. And so you have to be aggressive at moments. And I don't know. I don't know when Daniel will implement this. That's why I kind of almost want to see. Hopefully, he takes. I've compared another person. I told this to another content creator, but it was like, it feels like we're driving with the handbrake on.
Yeah,
it's like just release, and you see Willie Nanto's kind of regression in a sense because he's been so apprehensive going forward in that final third, because Daniel Farke, the message must be, if you lose possession, even if it's in the final third, that there's some sort of penalty or something for doing that. But I just feel like the governor should be taken off, this team a little bit when we do counterattack, because there's been some good positions. Like, if you
100%.
if you look, like, we're turning the ball over in decent positions, and you see like it's a 2-on-2 or a 3-on-3. And it's just like, man, I wish there was a chance there.
Yeah.
And there just isn't. So, yeah.
It's like we turn back and it goes backwards. And I'm not saying you have to always pass forward, of course, but it does feel like we're very, Farke is very much worried about being too left open on the break and not, committing too many forward for that reason and being exposed in that sense. And ball retention does seem to be more important to him than being completely ruthless and going for it. Which, I mean, it worked for us in the Championship. We weren't necessarily like the team that defended the best all the time, even though we had really, really good defensive numbers. We just possessed the ball, right? That was the way we defended last season. We'd go a goal up and possess the ball, but we can't be doing that at 0-0 in every game. That's not going to get us many points, as you say. So yeah, it's something to be worried about. I guess this is the last point is like, when you're a team that are going to be 0-0 in a lot of games until late on, like we were against Everton, like we were against Newcastle and against Fulham. We've kind of seen all three ways that can go. We've got the draw against Newcastle that just ended 0-0, and then the other two, it leaves you open to variance, doesn't it? And in the Everton game, we're on the right side of that.
Right.
And this Fulham game, we're on the wrong side of it. So this is what's going to happen this season. And I'm sure there'll be other games that we win 1-0. There'll be other games we draw 0-0, and there'll be other games we lose 1-0 because of the way we're set up at the moment.
Yeah. Variance, as you said. Do you like the 4-3-3 structure? I mean, there's so many teams that have implemented it, but do you like Farke's 4-3-3? I mean, what are you seeing out of that?
I think, like, in terms of as a mid block, when we want to be, against the ball, he calls it, doesn't he? Out of possession, I think it's a good shape to be in. I think it's worked for us so far in that sense. And like, apart from the Arsenal game, as you say, the outlier, like we have been strong defensively. The numbers are actually pretty good considering the teams we played. I think we're like 12th for expected goals against so far in 4 games. Okay, it's only a 4-game sample size, but that includes Arsenal and Newcastle again. So, and Arsenal will be a big chunk of that. So, like, I think the shape's more or less okay. It's just then, are you able to commit players forward quickly? Are you able to get, 2 of your number 8s, or at least one of the number 8s bombing forward with the front 3? Or is it like you say, there have been times when Nonto's been in a good position and then he's looked up and there's maybe like 2 forwards with him and no one else. It's like, I'm just going to have to turn back then and pass to a midfielder. So in an attacking sense, it's not giving us much. But, we might, like you say, I think some games it's probably going to be likely that we either go 4-2-3-1 from the start occasionally, or more likely is we probably go for it in games at the end and we put an extra forward on and we play 4-2-3-1 to finish a game. So when it's 0-0, I'm probably thinking about this more at home than away. Than at Fulham, he chose to go with Dan James over Nonto, and I think a lot of people were questioning that because they thought Nonto's probably going to bring a bit more, I guess, X factor here, maybe make something happen. And James was more of the same in terms of Aronson and Harrison and that kind of winger's intensity and out of possession approach. So, yeah, I guess the 4-3-3 at least allows for some flexibility later in the game. But at the moment, I don't particularly love the subs he's made out wide, because it seems to be a
Right.
lot of, oh my gosh, that player is really, really good out of possession. We need him in the team. We need to see
Yeah.
this out. Yeah.
No, all three of the non-Arsenal games have pretty much gone to what Daniel Farke has been doing, which basically is 0-0. At what minute, like 65, 70, and then he's put on the defensive wingers, so to
Yeah.
speak. And yeah, and then the result, like you said, is variation, or it's chance. He's flipping a little bit of a coin. It could be a draw, could be a win or a loss. I mean, but he hasn't gone for the win. He definitely is not going for the win. And and it's just disappointing when it's 0-0, 70 minutes. You'd almost be like, can we nick this? Can we go for it? Can we get
100%.
a win? And he's not. He hasn't done that. So I'm still interested in to see what thing he does when we do need a result, when we're down a goal. What is he going to do? What does that look like? Is it just going to be like for like, or is it going to be,
Yep.
Aronson on and James on and Harrison on, or something like that. So, yeah, you can get creative up the top, but you've got to be creative. You've got to eventually be creative and take risks. You got to
100%.
take risks. So we'll see what he does. Let's switch the page a little bit to Fulham. What are you seeing with them, and what have you guys been talking about over on All Stats, aren't we, about the matchup at the weekend?
You mean Wolves?
Wolves.
Yeah.
What did I say? Fulham?
You said Fulham. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Wolves.
We're
Sorry,
moving
it's
off
been a
from
long
Fulham.
week. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. I wasn't on the recent preview, and I haven't listened to it yet. But my own thoughts would be that Vitor Pereira did a pretty good job when he came in last season. Midway through the season, he came in December, didn't he? They're actually rewarding him with the new contract. Was the news today?
Interesting.
Even though they've lost 4 out of 4.
Yeah.
Last season, I feel like they got that. I hate this phrase, but it is kind of true. Is that new manager bounce? The teams like Wolves, and I still think this is true this season. They're kind of. I was speaking about this with John not long ago, John McKenzie. He was sort of saying like a lot of them can get away with it. They can basically be quite poor all for a big chunk of the season, change manager, and suddenly they have that kind of bounce from that, where they just go on a run. And last season, Wolves were in the bottom 3 when Pereira came in December, and they ended up finishing miles clear of the other 3 sides, Leicester, Southampton, and Ipswich. It was crazy. It was like 12, 13 points or something. It was a long way clear in just half a season. So he definitely got more out of them, but like their numbers last season weren't particularly strong from what I remember, like in terms of the underlyings anyway. So they were probably having a bit of luck go their way in some games, even if he was, helping them more than Gary O'Neill was in the first half of the campaign. But I don't know. It's hard to say. Like they've obviously lost a big player in Cunha and another one in Reynat Nuri. I think they're both shown already in flashes that they're quite good. I mean, they're both injured right now, but they've been shown in flashes like that they can do it at a higher level. A lot of the big teams this season in the Premier League, I think a lot of people have picked up on this and noticed that there's been a bit of a kind of putting them in their place, the smaller teams, I guess, put in quotes, because you've got Man City, Chelsea, Man United. They've all been shopping towards the middle and bottom end of the Premier League table, almost to kind of keep those, or keep you at arm's length. So they've weakened Wolves for sure by losing those 2 players. But I don't know, like I've seen a couple of their games this season so far. I've not been particularly impressed. They capitulated pretty badly against Everton. Between us and them, we scored 3 goals this season in the league, and all of them have come against Everton. So I don't know what that says about Everton, but they're flying at the moment too. But yeah, Wolves they don't carry a huge goal threat. They have a couple of players here and there that I quite like. They've got a good midfield, for example. But I think this is a game we should be targeting 3 points from, no matter what way you look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm going to listen to the preview from our end. I'd urge other people to as well. And I'm interested to see what they would have to say. But I think they'd be saying the same thing. Like Farke should be perhaps a bit less conservative for this game as he was
Mhm.
for the last match, even though we're away from home, and should be looking to say, like, we need to try and win this game. And I think
Mhm.
losing to Fulham, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I think it does put a bit more pressure on this game, at least
Mhm.
to not lose, and
Mhm.
certainly to try. I think at bare minimum, we need to score an open play goal, personally.
Mhm.
We haven't done that
Yeah.
yet. So even if we come out
Yeah.
with a 1-1 draw, having scored an open play goal, I think that would be a positive result. Ish.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a must. To me, it's a must win. I think it's a
Mm.
must win.
Okay.
Now, people say, oh, it's too early. It's 4 games in. I think if Farka is interested in keeping his job for the rest of the season, this is a must win game for him. Is it a must win game for us in terms of our relegation survival? No, we could lose and possibly turn the season around. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
probably a good way of looking at it. Yeah, yeah. I
Is
like
it
that.
is it a must? I think it's a must not. I would argue and probably say it's a must not lose.
Yeah.
Winning, you know, I can't remember. The phrase is something like this: winning teams keep losing teams losing. I don't want to see Dr. Leeds. Oh, they didn't have any points, and then they faced Leeds, and now they're back. We gave them life. This will be kind of I think depressing for the fan base to be like, we can't even beat a newly promoted side, and that kind of needs to go in there, because now the relegation odds have probably changed, and Wolves are really part of that conversation, and probably like one of the three, right, that are
Yeah.
looking in the mirror at like relegation. So you'll see that one of the top, the newly promoted sides will survive. And then I'm also looking at just at the bookies and what the bookies are saying, and we're actually still the favorites out of all the promoted sides to stay up, which I think is interesting, even after Sutherland's good start that they've had, but they haven't played the opponents that we have either. So, anyways, take solace in that. We do have to figure out, the open play goal side. And so, to your point, I would love to see an open play goal. I would just love to see kind of the gloves come off. I would, maybe that's the 4-2-3-1, and treating this side almost like a upper level championship side. And, I know he's not my favorite, but putting Brendan Aronson in a 10 or playing with a 10 and doing, three, I'm sorry, three, and then a striker up top. Maybe I don't know. Perot is a little bit, it's slow, not in terms of his speed, but in terms of his, I don't know, his thinking. And putting Perot in the 10, I don't know, or at some point doing that. I don't,
Yeah.
and I do think you have to start Willie. I really do think you have to start Nanto to get the best start to this match. And I would just love to see him just put him to the sword. Really put him to the sword. Whether that's 2-0. If we go up, 1 or 2 goals, I really, fancy us not to concede. Based if Farka comes out with a healthy midfield. With Tanaka back, of course, Ampadu back, and Stack. It's interesting. What's interesting to me too is the midfielders are popping up in spots, like Longstaff's popping up in spots. Stack has popped up in spots, and they've hit the woodwork. I would imagine a goal is going to happen at some point from there, but yeah, I mean, if there's some way that we can unlock that midfield to put a goal on, maybe that's Al, because he's probably got the best shot out of all of those from range. I just think there's something there where there's space for those midfielders to drift into and pop a shot on goal and maybe surprise a keeper. So, yeah, Farkas gotta unlock it.
The other side of this, though, is so with Wolves, you've got to think about it from their perspective. They've lost 4 out of 4 games so far.
Right.
They really can't afford another one. And they'll be looking at this, and they've been looking at this all season. Let's be honest. We have to be honest with ourselves. At home to Leeds, they would expect to win. So,
yeah,
actually, in terms of the games this weekend in the Premier League. I know Man City, Arsenal's one of them, but Wolves against Leeds is actually probably one of the most interesting games all weekend, I think, if you're a neutral, because like both teams will be eyeing a win here. It's not like a draw would be okay for both. It's not like that. It's certainly Wolves will be thinking we've got to win this. This is the opportunity to kickstart our season.
Yeah.
So
anything less than a win for Wolves, they'll probably be pretty depressed about their fan base.
Yeah.
So, anything else you guys are doing over on All Stats, aren't we? Or anything you're seeing about this match or anything else?
I think just on the open play stuff, just quickly, like I think the worry I think this would be throughout the club. I think it'd be for players and staff, is that there's a narrative forming about this open play thing, and it's really just important to completely just eradicate that by scoring at least once at the weekend like that. It'd be great to score a corner as well. I'd take any kind of goal really, but it's just like, I think an open play goal is going to be something. It's already kind of a narrative that's formed online anyway. If you look at Twitter, it's something that's been discussed quite a lot. I saw the quote tweets today on a couple of posts, and a lot of stuff about Harry Gray, for example, people talking about him, and it's like, it's because we can't score and people don't are noticing it now. So I think just eradicating that entire conversation would be pretty handy. So that's probably the big thing for me this weekend, more than even winning in a way. I mean, I take that back a little bit because I'd like to win more than anything, but it is almost as big as that for me. So that is something to consider. And also Wolves, a matchup that we've actually quite enjoyed in recent years. I don't know if you've noticed this. Yep. When we last went down, we'd won 7 games all season. 2 of them were to Wolves. So, I don't know if it plays a part. There's going to be hardly any players on show for both teams that played in that game. But I guess some clubs fans think about that. So maybe it's an added wrinkle, an added layer to this. I'd hope that it maybe gives us a bit of a lift. I don't know if it will, but I'm a little bit superstitious like that, even for a statsy guy. In terms of not just this game, but the season and what we're doing at All Stats, like we break the games down. Like you say, it's the underlying numbers more than anything. I know we're called All Stats, but I don't think that name's particularly like true of us. I think it's more analytical than stats. We do look at stats, but it's more of a like, why did this happen, and why did the manager do this, and why did their manager do that, and why did they play this certain player in this position? What is his profile doing to our players around him and stuff like that? Which is why I agree with you about Gnonto, by the way. I think he absolutely has to play in this Wolves game. I think he'd be massive for getting a bit more out of Bogle. I think he's just a better player to connect things, I guess I would call it, because he's very technical. Even if the output's not always there. James has got more output than him over the last few years, but Gnonto's a kind of a more thinking man's footballer. He uses his brain in those situations a lot of the time. He doesn't panic too often. We look at that sort of thing over at All Stats. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, please do come on over, and it'd be great. And I'd love to come back on here as well. We can keep this as a semi-regular checkup if you like.
I absolutely happy to do that. Let's run through some of the comments for some of the folks. This a comment from Michael says Dan James has been confusing too. What are you seeing out of Dan James and your hopes for Dan James this season? It's funny. I a couple years ago I went into a grocery store and I had a Leeds kit on or whatever, and the guy goes, Dan James. I was like, how do you know that? We're in America, it's like, and he goes, was a big Man U fan, and I am a big Man U, and I loved Dan. I love the work ethic and everything that he did. Every once in a while you'll run into a Man United fan that really appreciated Dan James. What are your thoughts on him so far this season? I think he might be carrying an injury, but
so from what I know, so I actually do a bit of writing for the club. About the club, sorry, not for the club. So I know a little bit more about this. And Dan James has been carrying a bit of an issue through pre-season and into the season. I don't know exactly what it is, don't know what the nature of that is, but he's just not quite been right, not quite been fully fit. I don't know if it's to do with what he's done against Fulham, but it might actually do him some good to be, sounds horrible, like it might do him some good to be injured and to rest. To be honest, it might rest all of his body, not just what he's done against Fulham. So that might be quite needed for him. In terms of James's form, like, I don't mean it in a harsh way, but like I almost feel like even though I like him as a player, I like his intensity. You know, he must be incredible on those stupid little pie charts they use for like sprints and intense
Yeah.
sprints and distance covered, like in pressures and all of those things. He'll be right at the top of the rankings for those kinds of numbers. But you know, in the Championship, his output was one thing in a team that scored 95 goals, and in the Premier League, it's not going to be quite the same. You know, he's shown it in flashes for Man United and Leeds in the Premier League, but it's never been like super consistent. So I think the expectations with James this season should have been low from an output front. That doesn't to say you should have you know, low expectations of him as a player overall, but like just in terms of goals and assists, it was never going to be the same in my opinion. He's just never going to be that kind of player at this level. If we can get like 10 or more, that'd be great, but I don't think it'll even be that. I think you're looking at sort of 7 or 8, which would probably be actually quite decent if you can do that. So yeah, his form's not look great, but I think there are reasons for that. I don't think it's because he's fully fit and whatnot. So there is that. And also, like, just in terms of like the outlook of the front three right now, I don't know if you agree, but like I just look at it and think the profile that makes more sense right now probably isn't James. If you've got Okafor, who's, you know, your athlete, your powerful runner, who's going to be really direct running at people, and you've got Calvert-Lewin to be the kind of focal point to spearhead the attack, you might need a bit more creativity, and I don't think that's ever been Dan James, even though I quite like him crossing the ball when he goes on the outside. That's about as far as it goes for creativity with him. He doesn't do much else in terms of breaking down a low block or picking a pass and slotting the eye of a needle of a pass. So yeah, not been the best start, but I personally quite like Dan James. I'm not like his biggest fan in the world, but I think he's got a place and a role in this squad.
Yeah, agree. He's just been a player that kind of plays himself in. That was like his speed, you know, which is a thing you can't teach. Either you have speed or you don't. So
yes,
yeah, I think I agree with you. I think he's still got a place in the team. I don't know if it's always starting, but yeah, we'll see how he goes, and hopefully he can regain some form. Jim says Farka believes the best form of attack is defense. I think yeah. Possession. I would say possession. He believes possessing the ball. You know,
yeah, I'd agree.
of course, if you possess the ball, you're not going to probably score. So he doesn't. He's not a fan of turning the ball over. It seems like at all at any point of the pitch, which is a good thing. But yeah, I think he does need to take risks. He needs to encourage the players to take some risks at the top end of the pitch, especially in the attacking third. Just kind of scrolling the comments. Some debate about if we're an established team and the panic level. Oh boy, I do not want to. I might avoid Twitter for whatever reason we dropped this Wolves game. Will not be pretty for Mr. Daniel Farka. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. You know, let's just get your thoughts. If Farka, for whatever reason, the next, I don't know, 2 or 3 don't go well, I think a board has to have a short list of managers. Nuno has made him, is now available. The I guess pipe dream of Jose or Mourinho is gone now with Benfica. But yeah, I guess thoughts on Nuno. There might be some other managers. You know, Sean Dyche is a fireman known to be negative football, but when you talk to Leeds fans, you know, 17th, I can give you 17th right now. I would say gotta be 70 to 80% of the fan base would say, I will snatch your hand off for 17th. So, I mean, there might be some other managers out there as well. But yeah, I mean, if you move the chess pieces forward, as any board would do, in case of emergency, like what do you think is out there, managerial wise, and what would you like to see, I guess, if we stay up?
I'm not saying I'd love this, but
Yeah,
like our squad is really well set up for Nuno. It actually is when you look at it
yeah,
man for man and the way we've recruited this summer. You know, Jakobiel is essentially Nikola Milenkovic. That's very,
yeah.
very similar centre backs from a similar part of Europe as well. And like, yeah, like that's the sort of thing that Nuno would love. I think a lot of our defenders would suit that. high energy fullbacks with big brutish centre backs. I love that energy in midfield, and then loads of quick wingers on the counter in transition. He'd love that in terms of the squad. In terms of when that would happen, I don't know. If we're in a period now, including the Fulham game, I guess, where we have what I would perceive as more winnable games. I'm not saying we will win them all, and I'm not saying this is going to definitely go well, but I think it's a nicer period of the season on paper in terms of how it looks. So I think that based on the fact there were murmurings in whether it was super strong murmurings or just some very subtle feelers put out by the 49ers at the end of last season about Farke and about his position, it makes me think that they would act quickly if they had to. I'm not saying that that's what I would do. I'm just saying that that's how I see it. And I think that the Mail posted the other day something about this as well, and they said that there is contingency plans in place already. And I mean, this could be stupid not to have, like you say, a shortlist of some sort, just in case. And obviously it'll be ever changing because managers come and go. Mourinho's gone. I don't know if he'd be on it, but he's gone. So Nuno would be on it though. I'm sure of it. He ticks a lot of boxes. So in terms of what's there now available, I don't have the free agent list of managers in front of me right now, but Nuno's probably the one that springs to mind as the obvious, just because of the way he sets teams up, the personnel we have. I think that would mesh quite well. I think that would actually work. Again, if there's anyone listening that doesn't like me saying that, I'm just saying it's a possibility and it's an option for us, and it could happen for sure.
Yeah, they're hedging their bets. This is a large investment. There's no way that they wouldn't do that. The far as the Mail stuff happened over the summer and that got released, I think it was important for Farke to win the league. If Solomon didn't hit that shot, and for whatever reason we didn't win the league and Burley won the league, I think the 49ers would have had an honest conversation and been like, we gave you a team in which you should have won the league, and maybe they would have been harsh and said, 2 years we've done this, we've given it, and you didn't win the league. And for not winning the league, there was cause to fire him, or to fire him, to sack him. However, he won the league. The Leeds won the league. The parade happened. And I think they said, okay, you won the league. It doesn't matter how it happened, but you did it. You got the job done. You now have the right to, coach the team in the Premiership, in the Premier League. And, but yeah, I mean, we've all been saying it, really. I mean, everybody that I know that can read the tea leaves, he's on a short leash. It just is. It's an important investment. Has he been backed? I don't know. I feel like he's been backed better than he was in Norwich, but I'm biased. No, he hasn't been given everything. And I do think the board, and hopefully, specifically Parag, which was the last time I dipped into this podcast world, I did a whole thing up with Parag and his kind of ego. And I think hopefully it's lessons learned from him, and he can, recruit better and nail some of this stuff on, because in America, when you're negotiating with players to come to your club, it's a whole different world. It's really just club and agent, and the player is there, but they don't have really much of a say. They're going to get a good package. With here, it's four or five, body can be the family. I can't remember, in the Paxal deal, it was the father was involved. It's a lot to get a big player over the line. A lot of not only resources that you're going to be, but it's time and energy. If this reports are to be, perceived true, you're literally calling up Rafinha. You're getting Rafinha's agent to see if Rafinha can give this guy a call. The ink's not even dry on Perry's deal, and you're going, Perry, can you call him and also try to? But that's all so much energy and time. Things can be made. So, anyways, all this to be said is, I hope the board has learned a lesson over the summer, to put into winter to finish, I guess, the job in terms of backing this side. Because I don't believe fully that it was a resource or PSR issue. And I do believe that there's ways that they can manipulate and maneuver money around the club to give us an extra amount of money. So anyways, that's just my take. I went on a rant, but do yourself a favor. If you're watching this video, literally go to the search bar, type in All Stats Aren't We. They're building out their YouTube channel. I listen to a ton of content on YouTube. They've traditionally been in the audio platforms and built out that, and they've have a great crew of people that do stuff like that. But literally go and do that. Subscribe to their channel. And Adam, thanks so much for joining me.
No, I really, really appreciate it. I've had a great time, and I'm sure we'll be doing this again at some point. And thanks for the shout out as well. It's massive. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.